Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes how Arab eco-normalization of Israel covers up its crimes. Israel determined to finish job despite Gaza suffering. People are all but dead, Gazan mother speaks of war's horror. Bloody diarrhea, jaundice, hepatitis, thousands fall ill in war-ravaged Gaza amid spike in infectious diseases. Bab al-Mandab shipping lane a target as Israel fights Hamas. How Arab eco-normalization of Israel covers up its crimes. Al Jazeera. Israel is using green projects to greenwash its image and normalize its relations with Arab states, according to an op-ed in Al Jazeera. The article argues that Israel's participation in environmental initiatives, such as water desalination and renewable energy projects, is a form of eco-normalization that masks its oppressive policies towards Palestinians and its occupation of Arab territories. It accuses Israel of depleting Jordan's water resources and imposing water apartheid on Palestinians, while presenting itself as a pioneer in water desalination technology. The article also highlights Israeli companies' involvement in renewable energy projects in Jordan, Morocco, and other Arab countries, which it says reinforces the occupation and apartheid. The authors call on social movements and civil society organizations to intensify their protests against governments that normalize ties with Israel and support boycott, divestment, and sanctions (BDS) initiatives. Israel determined to finish job despite Gaza suffering. BBC. As the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues, BBC journalist Jeremy Bowen provides a first-hand account of his experience driving between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. He describes how air raid sirens were triggered, and people swerved onto the hard shoulder to take cover. 3 cars even crashed into one another in the confusion. Bowen also reflects on the comments made by retired Major General Amos Yadlin, who compared Israel's fight against Hamas to World War II. Yadlin argued that eliminating Hamas is vital for Israel's future, but critics argue that the high number of Palestinian civilian casualties and the destruction of Gaza is against the laws of war. People are all but dead, Gazan mother speaks of war's horror. Reuters. Fatin Abu Kozeh is a 37-year-old widow who lost her home during an Israeli airstrike. Her 10-year-old daughter, Kamar Shurahi, was pulled from underneath the rubble of a mosque with serious injuries. Kamar had to undergo hours of surgery and has had one leg partially amputated. Due to the severity of her injuries, Kamar was allowed to leave Gaza to receive medical care in Egypt. Fatin Abu Kozeh spoke to Reuters as she waited to fly with her daughter to Abu Dhabi, where the UAE will provide medical treatment. Fatin has 3 other children in Gaza and has lost contact with her parents. She said she is in constant fear that her children in Gaza will be killed. Bloody diarrhea, jaundice, hepatitis, thousands fall ill in war-ravaged Gaza amid spike in infectious diseases. CNN. The World Health Organization, WHO, has warned that the healthcare system in the Gaza Strip is on its knees and collapsing. The war between Israel and Hamas has lasted 3 months so far, and the UN is concerned that more people may die from diseases than from bombs and missiles. The conflict began with an attack by Hamas on Israel in October, and since then the area has been under complete siege from Israel. Food, water, electricity and medical supplies are all in short supply, and the WHO has warned of potential epidemics, including bloody diarrhea and jaundice. There are also worries about high levels of diarrheal diseases and respiratory infections, as well as cases of measles, meningitis, chickenpox and acute viral hepatitis. There are also concerns about a cholera outbreak due to a lack of clean water. The WHO has called for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow aid to be brought in. The UN General Assembly will resume its emergency session on the situation in Gaza today. Bab al-Mandab shipping lane a target as Israel fights Hamas. Reuters. Yemen's Houthi rebels have been targeting vessels in the southern Red Sea and the Bab al-Mandab Strait in support of Palestinians, as Israel and Hamas continue to fight. The Houthis recently carried out a military operation against a Norwegian commercial tanker in the Red Sea and have warned that they will continue to block ships heading to Israeli ports until Israel allows the entry of food and medical aid into Gaza. The Bab al-Mandab Strait is an important route for global seaborne commodity shipments, particularly crude oil and fuel from the Gulf, and is also a key transit point for oil and LNG trade. West Bank fighters say Israel war on Gaza inspires more resistance. Al Jazeera. Palestinian armed resistance is re-emerging in the occupied West Bank as young fighters join armed groups to defend against Israeli occupation. The armed resistance movement began in the Jenin refugee camp more than 2 years ago and has since spread to other areas including Nablus, Jericho, and Tulkarem. The fighters, primarily young men aged 17 to 35, are focused on defense during Israeli military raids and attacking Israeli military checkpoints and illegal settlements. The recent Israeli assault on the Gaza Strip has further encouraged young men to join the resistance. Despite Israeli efforts to suppress the resistance groups through drone attacks and targeted assassinations, armed resistance in Tulkarem remains strong, particularly in the Ner Shams refugee camp. The camp has been able to deter Israeli forces from entering on foot due to obstacles and improvised explosive devices. Armed resistance groups have formed in Tulkarem in response to the ongoing Israeli military occupation and illegal settlements. The groups have been able to unite fighters from various Palestinian political factions and attract popular support across the occupied West Bank. China's Wang Yi urges coordination with Iran in call to discuss Israel-Gaza war. South China Morning Post. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called his Iranian counterpart for the second time since the outbreak of the Israel-Gaza war. The phone call focused on the conflict in Gaza, with Wang calling for U.S. sanctions China, Turkey and UAE firms for supporting Russia. Bloomberg. The U.S. Treasury and State Departments have sanctioned more than 250 companies and individuals in China, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates for their alleged support of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The sanctions target Russia's procurement network, a group of companies that assist in providing cutting-edge technology and weapons to Russia in violation of American sanctions and export controls. Despite penalties imposed on Russia, the U.S. and its allies have struggled to prevent the entry of these goods into the Russian market. The move comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visits Washington to rally support for a $60 billion aid package for Ukraine. There is no food, Israel pounds Gaza as hunger spreads, disease risk grows. South China Morning Post. Israeli tanks and warplanes have been targeting southern Gaza, causing the UN to halt aid distribution to the area. The UN has said that half of Gaza's population is starving, and the World Food Programme has said that the intensity of the fighting and the restrictions on movement have caused aid distribution to stop. The health system in Gaza has also been severely affected, with only 11 hospitals now partially functional. A World Health Organization (WHO) official has pleaded for the remaining hospitals to be kept intact. The UN General Assembly is expected to pass a draft resolution later today, demanding a ceasefire. However, the resolution is not binding and it is unlikely that Israel will agree to it. The conflict has now been going on for 3 months and has caused a humanitarian crisis, with thousands of people dead and many more injured. France to host meeting on tackling Hamas financing, online activities. Reuters. Officials from over 20 countries, including Israel, will meet in Paris to discuss strategies to curb the financing of Hamas and its activities online. France, Germany, and Italy have been pushing for the European Union to create a specific sanctions regime against the Palestinian Islamist group following a deadly attack on southern Israel in October. France wants to create a broader strategy that encompasses as many countries as possible to damage Hamas' ability to finance itself and disseminate propaganda on social media networks. The conference will begin with a presentation by Israel on the state of Hamas threat before moving on to sessions on curbing financing. Presentations will be made by Israel, France, the United States, and an independent organization that focuses on terrorism financing. Hamas uses a global financing network to funnel support from charities and friendly nations, passing cash through Gaza tunnels or using cryptocurrencies to bypass international sanctions. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Today, we have covered a range of news stories related to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. From the Arab eco-normalization of Israel to the re-emergence of armed resistance in the West Bank, and the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, these stories shed light on the complex dynamics at play in the region. The Al Jazeera op-ed highlights how Israel is using environmental initiatives to normalize its relations with Arab states, while masking its oppressive policies towards Palestinians. It is important to remember that while these green projects may seem positive on the surface, it is crucial to recognize the underlying political context and the impact on Palestinian lives. BBC journalist Jeremy Bowen's first-hand account of the conflict provides a glimpse into the fear and chaos that civilians on both sides of the conflict are experiencing. It is disheartening to see the high number of Palestinian civilian casualties and the destruction in Gaza, which raises concerns about the adherence to the laws of war. The story of Fatin Abu Kozeh and her daughter Kamar sheds light on the devastating impact of the conflict on innocent civilians. The collapse of the healthcare system in Gaza, as warned by the World Health Organization, is alarming. The lack of access to basic necessities like food, water, and medical supplies has created a dire situation, with the potential for epidemics and widespread suffering. The targeting of vessels in the Bab al-Mandab Strait by Yemen's Houthi rebels adds another layer of complexity to the conflict. This strategic location for global seaborne commodity shipments is now being used as a bargaining chip to pressure Israel to allow aid into Gaza. It is a reminder that the consequences of the conflict extend beyond the immediate region. The re-emergence of armed resistance in the West Bank shows the deep-rooted grievances and frustrations of Palestinians living under Israeli occupation. While violent resistance is not the solution, it is a reflection of the ongoing oppression and the desire for self-determination. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's call for coordination with Iran highlights the international interest in finding a resolution to the conflict. It is a reminder that the consequences of the conflict have implications beyond the region, as seen in the skirmishes between Hezbollah and Israeli forces and Iran-backed attacks on U.S. military facilities in Iraq. The U.S. sanctions on China, Turkey, and UAE firms for supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine highlight the interconnectedness of global conflicts. It is a reminder that conflicts in one region can have ripple effects on others. Lastly, the conference in Paris to discuss strategies to curb the financing of Hamas and its activities online demonstrates the global effort to counter terrorism and extremist groups. It is important to address the root causes of extremism while also focusing on dismantling their financial networks. In conclusion, the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has far-reaching implications, from the humanitarian crisis in Gaza to the international efforts to find a resolution. It is crucial to approach these issues with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to finding a just and lasting peace. As always, I invite you, my esteemed viewers, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your perspectives on the situation in Gaza and the wider conflict in the region? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6do Brief via email.